Hi everyone, it's Vladimir Blagovic and welcome back to the Full Funnel B2B Marketing Podcast and our series on ABM. And today's guest is Fes Askari, the director of Sales and Strategic Accounts at the Strategic ABM, which is an account-based marketing agency from London, UK. And they are working with B2B tech clients like CommScope and Cloudflare. Fes, welcome.
Hey Vlad, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Let's just dive in right away. I'd like to hear what were your best ABM plays and what kind of results are you seeing there?
Yeah, sure. I think when you think about plays, it really starts with understanding insights about the markets or accounts that you are going after. I thought it was interesting that you asked that question because often teams want to get really tactical really quickly, but it's good if you can take a step back and just evaluate the insights around the accounts. If you think about account-based marketing, one of the key principles of that is research on accounts, in the market that you're going after. And so, really it's about doing your homework on the accounts and really coming up with a framework for that research. I would say there's a couple of different ways to measure success from ABM in the sense of the value to sales and the value to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
From a sales perspective, there's the sales enablement plays, and that can be supporting the sales teams with driving engagement into top accounts, providing them insights into those accounts, providing them the messaging strategy, social selling training, and really strong value offers that you can enable the sales team with, rather than the sales team just going to market saying, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? It's more like giving the sales team a really strong value proposition and some insights to share with the buyers. On the marketing side of things, I think the plays that you want to consider there are thinking about how to build strong awareness material and thought leadership content, and how that builds credibility and trust around your brand. I guess, that comes a lot from work that you may be doing in your inbound marketing or content strategy. But really, from an ABM perspective, you're looking at your content strategy as it ties into the set of accounts, the cluster of accounts that you're targeting there. So I think, tactics are great, but you have to have that strategy, the insights, the research to really drive that forward. And, it's about looking at the value of the strategy for sales and for marketing as well.
Oh, makes perfect sense. And I totally agree with you. If you're looking at strategy, as you say, it will also depend a little bit on the client and their basically bottlenecks perhaps in their funnel or the way they're organized, like you mentioned, perhaps sales enablement. So could you do you have an example you could share where a sales enablement play worked really well, and what kind of results was that getting, and what are the kind of things that companies can consider?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think one example may be a case study that we published with one of our enterprise clients, Acxiom. They're a large data and marketing technology company, and they were trying to break into key markets across Europe, new markets to them. They knew some and had some customers in this space, like the automotive space, but they were quite new into that market. So really what we did with Acxiom, and they were quite early into developing a framework for account-based marketing, building their strategy. Again, it ties back to that point I made about insights and research. So we helped them build an insights report into the automotive space across Europe. How does big data work in the automotive market from a automotive trends point of view, from a consumer buying trends point of view. So really building up some insights around that market that we can then take that insight and break that down into more digestible content and enable the sales team, enable the marketing team with that type of content. So, just at the very top of funnel, when you're trying to build engagement in a market, it's really good to have an asset like an insights report that you can then use to create your compelling message and proposition for the market. But it can just be about giving the sales team some collateral that helps you differentiate yourself in the market, and really, rather than it being about product and service-led messaging. It's more about insight-led messaging and really helping start conversations with those senior executives in the accounts that you're targeting.
And you mentioned several times research, and I wonder, like, if you're looking at the research like an industry, like you mentioned just now, but what about researching individual accounts so you can kind of like personalize your messaging towards the account and potentially also some of the executives in there? Could you maybe share some practical examples of the kind of research you could do that would be helpful in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's layers to research depending on what type of ABM program you're running. In our kind of framework, there's the concept of one-to-many ABM,
Mhm,
which is at scale, and then you have one-to-few and one-to-one.
mhm.
So the depth of your research may change depending on what kind of ABM program you're running. But at a basic level, and many sales teams are doing this today anyway. If they have account plans, depending on the size of account that you're going after, you may have an account plan. But really, you want to have a framework for your research, and that framework, that template, could be at the market level. And looking at certain resources for industry trends and reports, like I mentioned earlier. Depending on your product and solution, there's data in LinkedIn. It's got a huge amount of data in LinkedIn that you can pull down on, like company employee data, if you're an HR technology company, for example. And then you've got so that's market level research, and then you have account level research, where you should be looking at a number of different resources to uncover challenges and business objectives for accounts. And again, you can use LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You can use financial reports from companies, depending on how big the company is. Some companies have to publish their annual reports, and you can pull out of their CEO objectives and other information that they have from a regulatory filing compliance kind of perspective. And then obviously you want to look at the company's website and their blog, their events, their kind of publication and information that they share publicly on their website. And that in itself can be a huge amount of information to use to tailor your messaging and personalization. The next step from that is kind of really looking at the people that you're targeting within an account. So I would say there's that kind of account level personalization, and then there's personalizing to individuals. And that can take a little bit more consideration, because sometimes you need to think about the tone of voice, and at what level do you want to personalize here? What's professional, what's respectful, those kind of considerations, right? So again, I think it's good to kind of create a framework for that kind of personalization and research, rather than just giving the sales team carte blanche to create these personalized emails, because you want to set the context and give them the messaging strategy there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. And can you share perhaps some lessons learned, some campaigns that maybe didn't perform that well, that seemed like a good idea initially, some of the pitfalls that maybe companies face in trying ABM?
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, you talked to, or your audience consists of a lot of early stage companies, or companies that are kind of building up their go-to-market fit, essentially product market fit. And I think, sometimes it's thinking about if your value proposition is truly validated, and understanding if you have a strong enough value proposition to take to market. Sometimes if you create a value proposition, it looks like it's really strong and compelling from an internal perspective, but then really when you take it to market, it's not really differentiated enough, or it's too focused around, like I said earlier, your own product USPs and solutions and things like that. It's not really speaking to the buyer challenges and the buyer pain points enough. So I would think, in terms of an account-based marketing program, rather than your wider kind of go-to-market proposition, you need to understand the challenges of the accounts that you're looking to engage with, so you can create that value proposition that speaks to that set of accounts or that specific account. And I think that's where a lot of businesses or teams may, not go wrong, but misunderstand what ABM really is. And we were talking about it earlier, but ABM isn't just running IP-based advertising campaigns, right? ABM in the most traditional or truest sense is really understanding those challenges of your accounts and aligning your messaging to the needs of those accounts. And so, I think it's important that you really work hard on your value proposition before you take it to market and get that right. One of
No.
the other areas that you might see issues with is sales and marketing alignment. And I think that's a key area that a lot of businesses struggle with, is understanding, how to drive sales and marketing alignment in an ABM context. And really, I think it comes down to, agreeing the objectives of your ABM program. What are you really trying to, deliver here? And also, having realistic expectations.
Mhm.
And making sure that there's visibility from everybody that's involved in a program into roles and responsibilities. And I
Mhm.
think those are key aspects of sales and marketing alignment that sometimes get skipped over because, as I said earlier, everybody's rushing to tactics, everybody's rushing to get campaigns launched rather than, really putting the steps in place to deliver success.
No, absolutely. I concur 100%. We were just did a research around that, and one of the main challenges that people share were exactly about sales and marketing alignment, but something that they perhaps don't share, but it's definitely often the root cause, is, like you said, is the wrong messaging. And to them, it may seem everything is fine, and the tricky part is that you just see the things are not working. You may not know why. Where actually, yeah, of course, if the messaging is not right, anything else you may do on top, it's not going to work as well. So it makes perfect sense. And I just wanted to ask you just a couple of more practical questions, like how do you plan your budget?
How do we plan the budgets in terms of an ABM context? Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're starting an ABM program, and you have some targets, like you said, for example, in that campaign where you're going after the automotive market. So how are you planning and distributing the budgets for that program?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key word, I think, that you mentioned there, that program, that particular program, because, there are different program types that you can run from an ABM context. And, when we're working with clients, again, it's about defining what their objectives are. Is it about net new logo acquisition, or is it about retention and upsell? Because those are very different objectives that you can have. And if you have an upsell objective where you have an existing account spending $100,000 a year, but you know that they could spend $500,000 a year, then you need to evaluate what the investment in that account should be, and therefore what is the budget that you want to commit to growing that account, that land and expand opportunity. Versus a net new acquisition program where, the way that we look at it is potentially tiering your accounts. So you have tier 1, 2, and 3. Perhaps tier 1 are your top accounts, your top spending accounts. Tier 3 are slightly lower value accounts. And you could then identify in your planning, okay, in the next 12 months, our objective is to win X number of tier 3 accounts, X number of tier 2, and X number of tier 1. Some of those tier 1 accounts may be existing customers that you want to upsell internationally. So just breaking down your strategy, into those ABM program types, one to many, one to few, one to one. That's one way you could start. And then also attributing budget by the value of the account to your business. What do we want to invest to win a tier 3? What do we want to invest to win a tier 1?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So you'll break them down into tiers depending on the revenue potential, and you'll spend more budget or time per account if they fall into the higher revenue potential. Makes perfect sense. And I was also wondering, also another practical question, like what kind of marketing stack do you use?
Technology and ABM. Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? There's a lot of talk about technology in account-based marketing. And for me, it's a little bit of a distraction, I'd want to say, because really ABM is about those fundamentals of insight, strategy, sales and marketing alignment, all of that really, fundamental stuff. But definitely with account-based marketing, there are some different technologies that you should consider depending on the maturity of your organization. So, you have the big companies, the enterprise businesses that have some serious technology budget, and they have some serious technology investment, so they're spending on enterprise CRM and marketing automation, content personalization, all of that kind of stuff. At the other end of the scale, you can definitely facilitate ABM, and you should just have really good marketing and sales technology in place for your standard go-to-market strategy, right? And things that I'm thinking of in that respect could be a strong CRM and platform like HubSpot. HubSpot has a great growth stack, and HubSpot last year rolled out some of their ABM functionality, and that gives you a view, like I was talking about a minute ago, of account tiering, tier 1, 2, and 3, and the ABM dashboard, selecting your high priority accounts. So that's a good place to start for growth organizations. And HubSpot has been doing some great work on their CRM as well. And just to full transparency here, we're a HubSpot partner agency. But I would be advocating HubSpot anyway, because I just love the UX in the platform. It's one of the nicest kind of CRMs to use. But from that technology stack, I think you need to have a good CRM with clean data. You need to know which accounts you want to go after, and you need to have clean data in the platform and make that usable for marketing and sales teams. So that's kind of foundational. On top of that, you might want to think about other technologies. HubSpot also has website personalization and the CMS, so you can build your landing pages. So it's a good foundation for this kind of program. And then, as I was saying, you may want to think about video technology. We're all living in a virtual world right now. We're doing a Zoom call, and really, today and the future of B2B technology sales is going to be more human interaction. And it sounds contradictory now that we're living in a remote world, but really, having that kind of face-to-face engagement in a virtual way, I think is really compelling nowadays. And you can use platforms like Vidyard or Hippo Video. There's a couple of platforms out there that have really strong video tech stack that do a couple of things. It gives you the ability to enable the sales team to have that more humanized interaction with potential buyers, and helps them often to communicate really complex propositions in a simplified way through video and just talking at this kind of emotional level rather than writing really technical spec in an email, right? So video, HubSpot, and then I would say, basic stuff would be LinkedIn Sales Navigator and LinkedIn, and have a really strong understanding of the LinkedIn platform, and how to build lists and understand how to get that account level information from that kind of environment. And there may be some other tools that I would suggest in terms of social listening, and I'm just trying to think of what else you would really need without going into that really enterprise tech stack. But does that give you a good kind of starting point?
Oh, sure. I think that's clear. And I was also wondering, thinking about somebody just starting or doing their first steps with ABM, what would you recommend? And I know this is going to be different depending on the goals, etc. But what are maybe some examples of good pilot ABM campaigns for somebody who is just starting? I'm also thinking about having create the momentum, because not trying something that is too complicated, not seeing any results, getting disappointed. So what will be some elements of a good pilot campaign?
Yeah, for me, a good pilot campaign, depending on your objectives, could be starting with that one to few program. and really selecting. Account selection can be a tricky thing, but what account selection does, and we haven't really touched on account selection, but if you build a strong account selection framework, what goes into creating an account selection framework is having clarity around your personas and your ideal customer profile. And again, that tiering concept. And so, what that does within your business is give clarity to the commercial team, to the sales team, to the marketing team around, like, who is a good customer for us, why are they a good customer, and what kind of engagement do we want to build with this set of accounts. And so it instead of what you used to have with the sales team, with their little black book of relationships saying, hey, these are the accounts that we want to go after, account selection really puts some data and logic behind the process there. Of course, at the end of that process, you still want to have that workshop session with the teams to say, hey, this is what the process shows us are our top accounts, but do you have any other insights to share? The sales team they're at the coal face of it. They're having conversations on a daily basis. Everybody's looking at trends data and seeing news articles from accounts coming out. So that all needs to feed in to the account selection process as well. So get your account selection process right. And then for me, a good pilot program is maybe a one-to-few program where it's not one-to-one. You're not putting all of your eggs in that single basket. And it's not one-to-many where you're going really broad with a message that maybe you haven't tested as yet. But it gives you that opportunity to build out some of the key foundations of your ABM program at the one-to-few level. So you get all your, like we're talking about, your technology stack. Make sure you've got clarity on that. Get your content strategy right. Get your messaging strategy right into this set of, well, in our view, one-to-few program is maybe between 10 and 15 accounts. Maybe you can go up to 20, but when you really get into the complexity of executing a one-to-few program, one account could be between 5 and 10 people multiplied by 15 accounts. That's a lot of moving parts, right? So I would suggest, start with the one-to-few program pilot if you have the right people in your team to make that happen.
And what would you say would be a minimum team size to run a pilot program for, let's say, around 15 accounts?
Yeah, I think in terms of the sales team, you probably want an SDR and an AE attached to that program, and then you definitely want a marketing stakeholder involved, whether it's an executive or a senior marketer who understands your value proposition, understands your kind of wider go-to-market strategy, and can manage that kind of building of the account selection framework from an internal perspective. So, I think there's some key people you need in the organization. And then you would pull in the C-level executives for their kind of perspective and their views on, account selection and which product you want to take to market as a priority. Which, I mean, it could be an existing customer upsell play into a one-to-few program, or it could be a net new acquisition, depending on what your business objectives are. But I think it's important that you have that core team internally. And I've seen this in businesses that we've been working with. They've put together this kind of core team, and then they've brought in the agency as an external expert to help just make sure that they accelerate their learnings. They don't make some mistakes that they could avoid early on, and they can prove success. But I definitely think having some key internal stakeholders to own ABM is a good strategy. And then you can bring in the wider organizations, product marketing, finance, C-suite, commercial and sales, whoever else you need to inform the strategy.
And you just mentioned executives, and I wonder, like, if the initiatives for doing that IBM pilot campaign or creating a program is coming from, let's say, marketing. What would be your advice for the marketer, how to get the execs, but also the rest of the team on board?
Yeah, I think you really need to focus on business outcomes and commercial objectives, So again, when we think about ABM success criteria, it's really about understanding what your business goals are. It's not a brand marketing program, right? ABM is really a revenue marketing program. and it's strong alignment with the sales team and their objectives and KPIs. And so, you know, you really need to understand which product and service is a priority for your business over the next 6, 12, 18 months. Not looking backwards, looking forwards, because you don't want to go to the effort of building an ABM program for a product that you're not going to have in 3 months' time, for example, right? So you need to have that view of what's important to the business from a product perspective. What are your commercial goals? Like I said, is it net new acquisition or is it upsell, retention? And then just, you know, honing in on the key objectives that get that executive buy-in, and potentially just for a pilot program to demonstrate the value. You know, not trying to do too much too quickly. And I think another thing is have high aims but manage expectations. So, you know, be realistic with the sales team about what's achievable in an ABM program. Really, ABM is a longer term strategy, and it's about focusing on your highest value accounts. And a lot of companies that we've seen adopt account-based marketing. And like I said, there's a number of different reasons for considering ABM. It's not a fit for all businesses. So I just wanted to mention that ABM doesn't work, or maybe not the most effective strategy for accounts that maybe have a freemium kind of sign-up offer. You may want to think about more of a product-led growth strategy, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, ABM may be a fit for your model. But it may be not the most efficient go-to-market strategy at that stage of maturity, right? So, you know, just making sure you're clear if ABM is a fit for your business is step one. And then step two is being clear about your objectives, and then getting that executive buy-in to those objectives, and then building your program around that.
Perfect. I think this is a great way to wrap it up. Thank you so much. I think you absolutely nailed the topic. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Vlad. Appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on again.
Cheers.